unfolds, BetMGM, the best place to bet the long ball, has all the home run betting options you could need. Download the BetMGM app, sign up, and get your piece of MLB action. BetMGM is an official partner of Major League Baseball. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 years of age and older. Virginia only. First bet offers for new customers only. All other promotions for existing customers. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Major
selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Why start anywhere else? It's all in one location at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. And with straightforward pricing and inventory arriving daily, there's no reason to start anywhere else than the Motor Mile. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs, many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Shop over 900 used vehicles in stock now, more than any other dealer in the area. Sheeler owns the finance company, so getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile. With financing options for every budget, you're a valued customer and not just a number on the Motor Mile. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com. And we're excited to welcome Honda and Hyundai to the Motor Mile family. Why start anywhere else?
Guests are great, except unwanted guests. At Specialty Exterminating, we know the difference. Hi, I'm Sabrina Kennan with Specialty Exterminating. We help you keep unwanted pests out of your home. Now we can keep those reptiles away. Our new reptile repellent is the perfect add-on for your pest prevention service. It's pet and people safe, so it's perfect for any homeowner, especially pool owners and homes in wooded and rural areas. Call us so we can repel the reptiles. Specialty Exterminating, your pest prevention partner since 1979.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Appropriately on a flexible Friday, a frantic Friday, whatever the term you want to use, where last week we had, yesterday we thought we were going to have a 15-minute show. Instead, Westwood One bumped us out at 4:45, so not a show at all. By the way, pod the music down, TJ. Yep, nope, not that one. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry,
We are learning on the fly with TJ. And the reason why he might be a little distracted is...
Oh, gosh.
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
By the way, whether you potted the music down correctly or not has absolutely no impact on the detour that we're about to take.
Right.
Congratulations are in order to you and your fiance of 2 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm excited, man. I'm very excited for what the future holds.
You should be. That's awesome. I'm excited for you. Anybody who can tolerate we media people.
Yes.
It takes a special individual. Her name, by the way, is it Monica? Is that right?
Brenda.
Oh, not even close. I had an A at the end of it, and that's about it. Oh. Brenda, I'm sorry. I totally whiffed on that one. Please accept my apologies for totally whiffing on her name. Did I see, by the way, because you posted it, TJ_Wilkerson8, Twitter and Instagram, as you should.
Yeah.
I'm sure she appreciates it.
Yeah.
And, the videos are great. They're exciting. But my real question is, you're a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
Is there a little tension with her favorite team? Because if I saw correctly, it looks like some folks on her side are, well, let the song do the work.
Those haters can't stand us. Left hand up. Who are we? The Commander.
Is she a left-hand upper? A commander?
No, she is not. She's actually a Detroit Lions fan.
That, let me tell you something. You probably know this from having grown up in for the majority of your life,
right?
Plus mine.
Yeah.
How do I say this? They've been more like the stuffed lions at my house.
Yeah.
Cute, cuddly, and not very ferocious.
Right. Absolutely.
Than lions you would find out in the African wilderness. So if she's a Lions fan, and
Yeah.
has she been one her entire life?
She just got into football. Where she came from was Alaska. And in Alaska, they get the Seattle Seahawks. Her
Okay.
family loves Seattle, but she has a lot of friends up in Michigan. So she loves Michigan when she goes. Lions represent Michigan and Detroit. So she became a Lions fan.
You know, she signed up for a life of torture.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say she did by signing up and saying yes to your proposal.
Yeah.
But let's just say if there are challenges in the marriage, loyalty seems like she'd be very good at it, because if she's a Lions fan, she probably knows a thing or two about how loyalty works through all the thin times.
Oh, yeah.
Not so much the best times.
And sorry to the fans of the Commanders out there, but she despises the Commanders because they ended the Lions' Cinderella season this past year.
You know, I can respect that.
Yeah.
There are still moments that sting from non-Giants, Cowboys, or
Those haters can't stand us. Left hand up. Who are we?
left-hand uppers, or whatever their name redacted under that great owner Dan Snyder happens to be. But they're outside teams as well that you go, okay, that's a real challenge and a real problem. So anyway, congratulations are in order. The only bone I have to pick.
Yeah.
Let me guess. You have friends who've gotten engaged.
Yes. Friends that are married, friends that are engaged, and friends that are still looking.
Okay. So you're close enough to where you know what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I like to think.
Well, I would too. Then I'll give you like a B to a B plus on your planning.
Okay.
It looked awesome with you went up. Was it McAfee's Knob? Is that where it was?
Yes, it
Appalachian
was.
Trail.
Yeah.
Gorgeous overlook. The video, it's sweet. It's awesome. Her reaction is fantastic. All that's great. The reason why this is not like an A plus, an A, or an A minus.
Uh-oh.
What in the world made you think that going up on a Wednesday afternoon to propose was going to leave you time to come back here in the fast lane, as opposed to just saying, hey, I have got some personal things to attend? Because here's the reality.
Yeah.
I have one of these. I'm pointing to those watching at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and DTR in Sports. It's a ring for those that are curious. Trey has a girlfriend as well. Melinda, married. Gary, well, let's just say his lady friend, well, Gary's grandchild happens to be my son's best friend in kindergarten.
Oh.
And worst friend, depending on the day. It's great.
Oh, man.
We would be understanding.
Yeah.
Just take the afternoon off.
Man, look,
and
Ed,
embrace the moment.
Ed, I live and breathe this as well, man. And I literally, we went in the morning, and I didn't think this through like I like to believe I usually do, but I didn't realize how long that hike was going to be. And it's an 8-mile hike, and around.
Dude, I run 8 miles. It takes an hour. You're hiking it. That's going to take longer.
Oh my! I know, man. I know. I felt so bad because I was like, okay, crap, time's running out. We've got to get down the mountain and everything. And finally, I gave up and I texted Trey. I said, Trey, I'm so sorry. I can't make it. And Trey understandably said, hey, I understand. He called me out, which he should have.
Of course.
And as he should. But yeah, I don't know, man. I just literally thought, you know what? I'm gonna go and get engaged, hike this mountain. I'm gonna come back and help with the show that I love. I look forward to every day when Virginia Tech baseball or hockey doesn't kick it off the air, And then I'm gonna go celebrate with friends at our party. That's literally what my day looks like. And it didn't. Not everything happened.
Jokes aside, congratulations.
Yeah.
Just these moments are rare in life.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
take it from somebody who so I have no problem saying this. I'm not going to mention it because they're not advertising with us, but I've gone to counselors before, therapists, people like that.
Yeah.
And one of the weaknesses that's been pointed out, justifiably so, is I like you and most people that are passionate about sports media.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say most people. There's a sector of it that like it's a vanity play only, and we all have a level of self-confidence to be in this, but some people intentionally don't even want to admit their own shortcomings. But most of us in this racket have a passion that's gotten us into this, and we touch on all the time. Supply and demand is a real challenge. There's a lot of people that would love to talk on the radio, and many of you in the audience might. But
Absolutely.
the question is, what junk are you willing to do? And the junk you were willing, I mean, look, I'm guilty as always, is you were willing to come back after proposing to your now fiance. Again, we congratulate you on that.
Yeah.
To come back and be here. And we all appreciate that. My only thing is, that's a day, and look, you did the right thing. You didn't make it back in time. I hope you enjoyed the heck out of her company and your family and her family, or anybody who was around.
Yes, sir.
To enjoy that experience of proposing and getting the most important yes that you have gotten in your life up to this point. I say up to this point because
Absolutely.
whenever you set the date, the next one will be the real important.
Yes,
But
I do.
Jokes aside, congratulations. It's awesome. Take those type of moments in life and enjoy the heck out of them, because, when you're in this racket, it demands so much time and just it demands a lot of odd times, and it can put a strain on relationships, time with your family, everything else. And it can sometimes create stress because you're trying to do a lot here so you can physically be present. But by doing that, you're not always the most present in the right state of mind you need to be. Again, getting my usher on here in the fast lane. I'm the worst at that. Sometimes I try to do so much here that then I'm in a bad mood when I go home because I've tried to do so much here and I couldn't get as much done as I want. And something carries home as opposed to, the old breathing, count to 3, whatever your thing is. So we all do it. Congratulations. Enjoy the heck out of it. And if you have found a lady that can appreciate your desire to pursue this racket of sports media, that's absolutely awesome. And congratulations to you both.
Ed, let me tell you how passionate she is real quick. She drove me to ACC football kickoff media days so I could be there and live out my dream when my car broke down.
That's phenomenal.
That's how much she is in the ride for this passion. But I've told her, and I meant it. Look, I love sports. I want to be a part of it, but I promise you're always going to come first. Our kids, if we have it or when we have them, they will come first. I will work hard to make sure that happens.
I will say this about this racket, because, back in the day, it was, I wouldn't say I want to be the next Stephen A. Smith or, McAfee, or insert your personality here.
Absolutely.
First of all, that's not really my style.
Yeah.
We have opinions. I think we're safe to say it. I think we deal in more nuance than they do, and maybe it's to our own detriment. But those guys are often workaholics. Stephen A. has said he knows why he's not getting married, because he has to pour so much into his career and he travels so much, and there'd be more temptations with the celebrity and the fandom. Again, to his credit, he kind of seems to know his personal situation and his tendencies very well. But when you find the right person and they come first, I'm happier at the Virginia Talk Radio Network and here. God may put me in different places in life. It may happen. You just never know if or when those doors might open. They haven't yet. If they're meant to open, he'll open them. If they're not, they won't. And so far, they haven't. But a lot of it is also, I'm not actively trying to work my way to the top like I was back in the day, because I got to get set up that is conducive to family life. And that's so much more important beyond it. And I still get to do a lot of what I enjoy doing, which is like you, we get to go to ACC football media days, basketball media days. We get to go to ACC tournaments. We get to go to, insert your sporting event here and be close to these people. Let's keep it real here. We're getting them for free. And getting free parking to a lot of these things. Like most people literally will pay for all that, and we literally are not. So we're very blessed and fortunate in that regard. Is it work? 100%. Are we supposed to be active observers through our eyes, through our ears, through our senses, through talking with people? No doubt. But that's one of the interesting parts to your job. And as you grow in your relationship with your fiance, for whatever my 2 cents are worth, take it from somebody who screwed it up in a lot of ways, but is blessed to still have a wife that's around, and that's in and of itself, I count it as a blessing myself. But for you, it's awesome. I am so happy.
Thank you, Ed.
For you and now your fiance, and the fact that you guys will have a chance to get married and cultivate a life going forward.
Absolutely.
So congratulations on that. That's one definition of loyalty. Not so much loyalty is something that we also have to touch on momentarily, but not to start the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m. Ish, because our counting skills are Kinda-ish. Let's start with number 5.
Well, tonight's Virginia Tech baseball game that was going to take over for us at 5:30 p.m. Nope, not going to happen. I need one of those nope, not today shirts that I can put on in the Fast Lane and Don, because it wasn't going to happen today. So we were going to have a half-hour show. For those that checked out Fast Lane, Ed Lane on the socials early this afternoon, that's what you would have thought. Now, for those of us that are updated on it, not so much, because we're going a full hour. Thankfully, Bud Foster, gracious enough to join us around 5:40 today. Tanner Marlar of FrontStretch.com covering the race at Bristol around 5:30. So we've been able to juggle things. It also means the Lynchburg Hillcats game tonight against the Kannapolis Cannonballers has been postponed. Cannonballers, Hillcats, doubleheader tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. FSU, Virginia Tech baseball. Pod that music up, by the way, just a smidge. Virginia Tech baseball is postponed till 11:30 tomorrow for that doubleheader. It will take place of the spring football game. Speaking of spring football, somebody who will not be dressing for one of those games,
Number 4.
Tony Elliott announcing that Louisville offensive tackle transfer Monroe Mills, a non-contact ACL injury, and is out for the season. Look, nobody's pretending that this guy was a Xavier Chaplin level of recruit. Otherwise, he would be in the SEC at a big school like Xavier Chaplin, the former Virginia Tech offensive lineman, is. But for a Virginia program that has really struggled to get it right on the offensive line in the Tony Elliott era, Monroe Mills was expected to come in and give them a big lift, big being pun intended, and maybe lift by lifting other people out of their desired positions to get into the backfield against Chandler Morris or whoever the running backs are that might be taking the handoff from Morris. It's big for Virginia losing someone like this because they are not a school. First of all, offensive linemen are hard to find, generally speaking. Second of all, there's certain programs where I'll trust the offensive line coach to fill in. Forgive me, but I don't, even though Coach Heffernan is pretty well regarded, the results haven't backed it up at Virginia compared to other O-line coaches at other places. If you lose a player like Monroe Mills, I think this is a real concern for the Virginia Cavaliers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Virginia already, who's had their struggles offensively the last 2 years, is definitely not good news.
No, it definitely is not. This is the type of news where you go, I don't really know if this is exactly what I would like to be hearing. Meanwhile, if you're a fan of college sports, something you'd like to be hearing is
Number 3.
CBS announcing they averaged 15.3 million viewers for the Final Four on Saturday night, the best doubleheader figure since 2017. Meanwhile, the national title game helped deliver an overall 18.1 rating, which capped the best Final Four and title game combination since 2017. The championship game was the best championship game since, sorry to the guardians of the game who hate UVA basketball, but it was the best championship game since Virginia beat Texas Tech, which was on, by the way, True TV, TNT, and TBS, which does not get the same ratings that this past weekend's Final Four and championship on CBS TV generated. But you combine that with women's basketball, which, okay, it fell 55% from last year and dropped 14% from the Caitlin Clark-fueled appearance 2 years ago. But I take these numbers and say, despite the transfer portal challenges and roster remembrance challenges that do exist in college basketball, it's really difficult to remember. By the way, make sure you plug a headset back in. Something got disconnected when that box fell.
Yes,
For Virginia, in spite that, you've got so many more areas in college basketball where people still have their concerns. It's not the interest, it's whether schools are willing to make the upgrades to the roster themselves to get to that particular point. And that's the big takeaway. And it backs up the ratings we had. This, again, our best March was 2 years ago for March streaming numbers on the VTR and Sports app. But this was the second best March we've ever had, which, again, there's skepticism and there's issues I have with the state of college basketball. But men's basketball had a very strong Final Four, and even women's basketball at 8.5 million. Okay, it's not what it was last year, but everyone knew it was going to fall off with Caitlin Clark not being there. The two best years of women's Final Four and championships were her 2 years. As everyone could have expected, it's what do you do since then? And the numbers are much better than they were BC before Caitlin Clark on the women's side.
Absolutely. And it stinks because I feel like if Paige was one of the most talked about players before Caitlin Clark, and then she had the injury and it just felt like her fame dipped off. I felt like, though, it was all impressive that the women's numbers have stayed. Even if they've dropped a bit, they stayed consistent. They're still high ratings because it was UConn versus South Carolina, two of the best women's college basketball programs out there.
And they did a great job. I mean, to their credit, of marketing other stars. Paige Beckers of UConn, who was in the title game. Juju Watkins, I know USC, she suffered the injury.
Yeah.
Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame, they disappointed not making it to the Elite Eight. They lost in the Sweet 16 this year, which was disappointing by their standards. Kim Mulkey is always must-watch TV just for the bodacious outfits and the fact that she recruits a lot of these flashy, polarizing players similar to her own personality.
Yeah.
So LSU is kind of a ratings magnet in women's basketball, regardless of the player, because the coach recruits a lot of players in her own image, and in her own image is often controversial in and of itself. But you combine that with men's basketball, where it's in a challenge in the regular season because it takes so long to figure who these guys are and where they came from, because it's almost like everybody's got one and dones. It's done with your program and on to the next college program, done with your program and on to the NBA. But the turnstile effect does make it more challenging, I think, even in men's basketball than in women's basketball, because there's more players that are in that turnstile mindset. Speaking of which,
Number 2.
Alan Huss leaving High Point to return to be Greg McDermott's assistant and, within the next 1 to 2 years, head coach in waiting at Creighton. Now, for context, Huss is a Creighton alum. That's part of this.
Yeah.
Another thing is, we've seen this now with Griff Aldrich leaving Longwood to go to Virginia. Alan Huss leaving High Point to go to Creighton. I tend to believe there's a level of this being a trend that is what you're going to find in college basketball, which is coaches that are assistants at power programs. And Creighton's in the Big East. I call them part of the Power Five.
Yeah.
Big East, SEC, ACC, Big 12, and Big 10 are
Yeah.
all in that category. You'll see coaches that will be assistants there, drop down to gain some level of head coaching experience, and then be willing to, I think, come back up and either be a coach in waiting or at least position themselves to where they can be a coach somewhere else, but they can only take being the head coach at the smaller level so much, because if you think your roster's in flux, the higher up you go, the lower you go, the fewer resources you have. And yes, that's code for
dollar bills, y'all.
as Kenny Powers would remind us.
Yep, it's easy to poach from mid-majors, basketball, football, all of it. And the Big South, that's the second big loss out of it, too. I mean, you talk about Longwood, High Point now, who was just in the tournament for the first time ever. But I think Huss is making the right move for his career.
Meanwhile, the payoff on what we teased to begin the Fast Five at 5-ish.
Number 1.
We mentioned loyalty, and it sure sounds like Brenda is loyal to TJ. She said yes on Wednesday. Thankfully, while you need to pour into that relationship every day, you do not seem to renegotiate for your own marriage every single year. Well, here's my last little bit of marital advice, and Brenda seems like an upstanding young lady, so this does not apply to her. But for those out there who are seeking or tempted by other people outside your relationship, here's my one rule of thumb. If the person you're interested in is willing to leave their significant other to be with you, they're probably willing to leave you for the next shiny object, because they're more loyal to what you can give them and do for them than to who you are as a person. That's obviously the reality in college athletics, but that has become more pronounced today because Nico Imaliava, Trey's quarterback at the University of Tennessee. Trey loves him. Some Nico Imaliava. He may not be at Tennessee much longer. He is the first noted holdout. He is reportedly held out of the remainder of spring practice starting today. He was not there because he was originally agreed to and originally signed to a 4-year, $8 million reported contract with Tennessee to pay him $2.2 million this year. However, the market has increased. I can't say I don't dissuade him from that, because former not-so-great Georgia quarterback Carson Beck reportedly received $4 million to go to the University of Miami, which I would just say I'd rather have paid $4 million for Cam Ward than Carson Beck based on what they've shown they could do. And that's before Cam Ward was slated to be the number 1 pick. I have my doubts about Beck at Miami, but hey, the reality is, don't be shocked when guys are all about the money that they just bail, because these contracts are not actually binding. And you're going to get more of these where guys may be even holding out closer to the start of the season or faking injuries or doing other things to try to preserve their eligibility as the season goes along. It is why I've said it before. The schools would love to have this, but the players have more leverage now because the people in charge, I refuse to call them leaders at schools, athletic administrators, or school presidents, and I refuse to call the people at the NCAA leaders. when they had the position of strength and none of this had gone to court, they should have asked their lawyers, to whom they were reportedly paying $40 million a year, hey, is our business model going to hold up in court? And they should have been told, no, it's really not. So now may be the time to go ahead and classify these people as employees, let them in on revenue sharing, and make sure they get terms that are not nearly as favorable as pro sports. Because now that cat's out of the bottle, and if you're a player, you can continue to negotiate regularly like Nico Imaliava has done, but frankly, like everyone in college basketball seems to be doing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because The Athletic had an article the other day about how it's actually made this really hard to evaluate players, certain players, coming out up for the NFL draft, especially guys that have bounced around from school to school. How do they really fit? Yeah. How do they take difficulty when it comes to coaching? That's a whole nother topic that's worth getting into. Nick Saban had some interesting thoughts recently on that. But it's the reality of where you are in college athletics, and it ultimately begs a question that we actually get to transition into quickly, a little bit of fam feedback here in the Fast Lane.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. Trey Lyle VT and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, it's time for fan feedback in the Fast Lane.
So one of the bits of fan feedback that we've gotten was from Carl, who mentioned that the reality of college athletics right now is such that there are minimum contributions to different funds. There are minimal organizations that you can give your money to, and you're really trying to figure out where it's going to go. He sent a great article, Carl did, by the way, to fastlaneedlane@gmail.com. You can do that, about the dark money behind Duke basketball and that the roster took millions of dollars to assemble. You don't really know where this money's coming from, but I've heard from multiple people who are connected that it's in the neighborhood of about $4 million for Cooper Flagg this past year. Those numbers are only going up when you hear the reports of guys like AJ DeBanza at Purdue getting in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 million. JT Toppin at Texas Tech as well. But that's the truth of where you're going right now and the nature and direction of college basketball. And Carl's point about the mystery behind Duke, it may be a mystery where it's originating, but I don't think it's really a mystery that it's driving players. And in basketball, it's more prevalent because it's more system agnostic, whereas in football, some guys may fit some systems and others. So it's going to depress the market of what there is.
TJ Powers, Virginia, perfect example.
Very good one. That's a great point of where, he goes from Duke to Virginia because he just doesn't have value to Duke, but he has value to a program like Virginia, and they overpaid for him. And then he didn't fit once Tony Bennett left.
And then he left.
And then he left again. And that's the truth, is a lot of these guys are getting so much money, but if you're trying to evaluate a guy like that at the professional level, it becomes really hard. Speaking of evaluations, Bud Foster will give us his spring practice evaluation at 5:40 today in the Fast Lane. But when we return, Tanner Marlar, NASCAR at Bristol for frontstretch.com.
Mark Dalton here with the Terry Auto Group. If you don't love your car, then you're simply just driving the wrong one. At Terry Volkswagen, Terry Subaru, Terry Auto Outlet, and the Terry Clearance Center, we've got the perfect new or used car for you. We make your car buying experience easy. Need help with imperfect credit? No problem. Our team works hard to get you approved and back on the road. Because when you shop at Terry, you drive away happy. Visit us at any of our 4 locations or online at terryautogroup.com. Terry Auto Group. You'll love our cars.
Do you know what a cold climate heat pump is? They're a new generation of heat pumps from Tara Lee Mosley that provide substantially more heat than traditional heat pumps, even when it's 5 degrees outside. This means your electrical auxiliary heat runs less, saving you big time on your electric bill. And with the recent spikes in electric utility rates, that's crucial. Plus, these new heat pumps qualify you for a $2,000 federal tax credit. Contact Tara Lee Mosley for more info on the new cold climate heat pumps.
Are you ready to move to the next chapter of your life? That means you're ready for us. Hi, I'm Moyanne Harding, the region's only total turnkey realtor and interior designer. We'll come to you and help you decide what you're ready to let go of and bring you top dollar for those unwanted items. Most importantly, we'll sell your most valuable investment, your home. With decades of experience, just hand your keys to us and let the stress melt away. Call me today and book your consultation, www.moyanne.com.
Moyanne Harding, brokered by Keller Williams.
Hi, Gary the Third here, and I'm excited to say spring has arrived at Gary's Garden Center with great plants and a great selection. Gary's has seasonal color flowers along with vegetables, 60-plus varieties of herbs, perennial flowers, and much more. With friendly service and great advice, We are always happy to answer your questions. Visit Gary's Garden Center at 794 Leesville Road for all your lawn and garden needs. Stop by, say hi, and take a look around.
When you're voted one of the best plumbers according to Lynchburg Living magazine, you want to hire the best. Sullivan Plumbing wants the best plumbers to join our award-winning team. Do you have a clean driving record? Do you have at least 4 years plumbing experience? Then you're a 5-star recruit, and Sullivan Plumbing would love to meet with you. Take the first step. Call Sullivan Plumbing in downtown Lynchburg or email sullivanplumbing@gmail.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Fast, furious, frenzied, whatever you want to call it. We're somehow here in the Fast Lane, and we're partially referencing as we welcome you back in the fact that, yes, again, getting our usher on here in the Fast Lane, our confessions that we initially posted at Fast Lane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and my personal LinkedIn page, that we would have Tanner Marlar to start the show, followed by Bud Foster leaning in to the great Evan K. Hughes for Virginia Tech baseball. But looking out the window, if you're listening live, or remembering what the forecast was on Friday afternoon, if you're listening later at Fast Lane Ed Lane, where you listen to podcasts, or VTR in Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube, you'll remember rain in the forecast. And while they have turf at Virginia Tech, it still is not the best weather for baseball when it's expected to clear up on Saturday afternoon. So doubleheader, 11:30 airtime for Virginia Tech and Florida State. Another game, 11:30 airtime, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Yes, 11:30 airtime on Sunday for the finale of that Virginia Tech baseball series. So we've bumped around our schedule. And speaking of bumping and banging, yes, the guest that was going to join us at the beginning of the Fast Lane today, but is gracious enough to join us covering for FrontStretch.com, where there will no doubt be some, you would think, beating and banging at Bristol Motor Speedway this weekend. Tanner Marlar, gracious enough to be joining us today here in the Fast Lane. Tanner, a pleasure to be speaking with you. Bumping and banging at Bristol, or is that more the fall race and we're more likely to be in for tire wear issues like we saw last spring?
Well, I think it's really interesting, Ed, because I was actually talking to a colleague of mine about this the other day. You have these two races this past year, which were so different. And NASCAR will tell you, and Goodyear will tell you that, oh, it was the same tires. I don't know how much I buy into that, but either way, I think that it's going to be a lot of what we saw at Martinsville. We saw a lot of tempers kind of flare over. I do think we're going to see a lot of bump and run. I'm not sure what the tire wear situation is going to be like. Obviously, I don't think we'll know that until we hit the track for practice and we can talk to some teams and figure out what they're dealing with. But I think judging off of last year and how kind of unpredictable those two races were, I think it's going to shape out to be a fun one either way.
Yeah, it should be good. You hope it's not what we've seen at a lot of short tracks recently, which has been dominance in some form or fashion. And it leads us to the question of Denny Hamlin. He was the one dominating at Martinsville a couple of weeks ago. He had good fortune on his side and a great pit crew at Darlington to make it 2 in a row. Are you on board the when these things come in spurts, they come in spurts train, or are you more of the belief that, hey, this thing can flip on a dime and all of a sudden, as great as Denny historically is at short tracks and at Bristol beating your favorite driver, that one of those favorite drivers is more likely to overtake the number 11?
Well, truth be told, I kind of buy into the thought that when it rains, it does kind of pour. We saw this with Christopher Bell earlier in the year. And when we saw that, it was kind of like, we thought it might have been a spurt, but JGR has been fast thus far this year. And as you said, Denny on the short tracks is tough to deal with. And as you said, he's got this track record of, like you said, beating your favorite driver at Bristol. I think the stars are aligning. Denny Hamlin has got a really fast number 11 car right now, and he's going to one of his favorite tracks. If you want to pick a driver this early, I think he's the one to pick.
You mentioned this early part. How much do you want to see what happens in practice, particularly with tire wear, and then base your projections on what happens with the tire wear based on the fact that last year's race was an example that the veteran drivers like Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and others are very skilled at managing that?
Well, and the reason I say I always like to get to practice and see how it is, NASCAR is gracious enough to let us have a lot of access as media members. And as part of that access, we get to talk to a lot of the crew chiefs. We get to talk to a lot of the pit crew members if we can grab them. And they're pretty open about the fact that, hey, these tires are getting cut down. They're lasting a good while. We don't know, or we do know if we're going to have the same kind of problems as last year. So until I really get there and put the barometer on that, there's no way to know for certain. I think the weather is going to lean towards us not having the same problem. It doesn't look like it's going to be a crazy hot weekend. I think we're going to have a really solid tire wear situation. As you said, the veterans who can manage it the most on that Bristol concrete are really going to come to the forefront.
Tanner Marlar, frontstretch.com, hanging out with us today here in the Fast Lane, looking ahead to the NASCAR race weekend at Bristol and what we can expect going forward. The other part has been, you mentioned Denny Hamlin and his success. There's the idea of it, Denny, Kyle Larson, and everyone else. Are you on board with that? Or maybe did you tip your hand a moment ago that because of the veteran presence at this track, you might get a lot of other contenders, maybe even drivers that are looking to break some slumps like Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, and others?
Yeah, and, we saw this last season, really. If you think back to just a year ago, I think Ford overall had a very slow start to last season outside of the super speedways, and the last two championship winners have been Ford. So we talked about at length on Front Stretch late last year how it seems like Roger Penske and that group have really figured out a way to get a lot of life late in the season. Now, whether or not that starts this weekend, I'm not sure. I think, like I said earlier, though, that you're going to see a veteran winner here at this Bristol track. It's going to come down to tire wear. It's going to come down to track position, and it's going to come down to strategy. And that's something that these older drivers who are more experienced are really adept with.
When you mention veteran drivers, do you include a guy like Bubba Wallace in that because he's a veteran on short tracks, or do you mean it mostly to just be Cup Series veterans?
I include the short track veterans. I think Bubba Wallace, like you said, could put together a really strong run. And we forget how long Bubba Wallace has been at the Cup level now. He's been around. This is not a guy who has to kind of learn the tricks of the trade anymore. And in that same vein, he's been in the Cup Series a lot less. But I think Josh Berry's a real name to watch this weekend. A true short track ringer, a short track savant, as I like to say. I think Josh Berry could realistically throw his name in the hat this weekend with it being at Bristol.
Yeah, that's another good name to keep your eye on because of Barry's success in the grassroots racing. Tanner Marlar with us here today in the Fast Lane. Tanner, the other bigger picture development that's come out of the early chunk of the season, we're about a quarter of the way through it, is you mentioned Penske starting faster than expected. Gibbs and Hendrick have also had good starts. Right now, is it Penske, Gibbs, Hendrick, and then those teams that are kind of offshoots like 2311 Racing and Wood Brothers Racing, and then everybody else?
I think yes, here early in the season until we get later to where we can see if 2311 has that same life out of a driver as we did last year, like a Tyler Reddick. It's going to be tough because at this point in the season, Tyler Reddick was doing okay last year, but really it was that midpoint to latter half of the season where he really caught on and found a lot of speed late. I really think that right now it's JGR and everyone else. I think the other two major teams are playing a little bit of catch up. We've seen Denny Hamlin win 2 now. We've seen Christopher Bell win 3, and JGR's had a lot of speed out of that half of their driver lineup. And if they can bring the back half with it, I think they're working with something really serious here for this season.
Tanner Marlar of frontstretch.com with us here in the Fast Lane on an abbreviated version, which means we'd love to go longer, but not quite as much as we normally would with you, which is why we're stuck going shorter today. Tanner, thank you for your time. Short chat appropriately for one of the shortest tracks in NASCAR. We look forward to the action at Bristol and keeping up with your work at frontstretch.com.
Thanks, Ed. Always a pleasure to come here on the Fast Lane with you guys. You run a top-notch program over here. Always great to hop in.
Well, clearly you need to listen more at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts so that you can really determine whether this is top-notch or be a skeptic like many of our haters are.
Well, I think if they do, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. I really do.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, even if it was somewhat tongue-in-cheek from Tanner Marlar today in the Fast Lane. Meanwhile, when we return, Bud Foster, Virginia Tech football advisor and legendary former defensive coordinator, on the upcoming spring game and whether there are changes that might even include phasing it all the way out. That next here in the Fast Lane.
Guests are great, except unwanted guests. At Specialty Exterminating, we know the difference. Hi, I'm Sabrina Kennan with Specialty Exterminating. We help you keep unwanted pests out of your home. Now we can keep those reptiles away. Our new reptile repellent is the perfect add-on for your pest prevention service. It's pet and people safe, so it's perfect for any homeowner, especially pool owners and homes in wooded and rural areas. Call us so we can repel the reptiles. Specialty Exterminating, your pest prevention partner since 1979.
It's natural to wonder why you should consult a legal advocate after a serious auto accident. The reason is personal injury cases are complex. Hi, I'm Randy Trost of Trost Law. Filing a claim isn't just about filling out a form and waiting for a check in the mail. Most accident resolutions require intricate knowledge of Virginia's personal injury laws and experience working with insurance companies. That's where Trost Law will help. Call us at 777-HURT and visit trostlaw.com so we can do the work to obtain the best result for you.
Join the Lynchburg Hillcats at Bank of the James Stadium this summer for any of your favorite nightly promotions. New this year are Senior Sluggers Tuesdays, where members of the Silver Sluggers Club get in free, and College Pride Night, where those wearing college apparel receive a discounted ticket on Wednesdays. As always, we'll have Thirsty Thursdays and giveaways and fireworks on the weekend, and free admission for Kids Club members on Sunday. Get your tickets today at lynchburg-hillcats.com.
Hi, Gary the Third here, and I'm excited to say spring has arrived at Gary's Garden Center with great plants and a great selection. Gary's has seasonal color flowers along with vegetables, 60-plus varieties of herbs, perennial flowers, and much more. With friendly service and great advice, we are always happy to answer your questions. Visit Gary's Garden Center at 794 Leesville Road for all your lawn and garden needs. Stop by, say hi, and take a look around.
Are you ready to move to the next chapter of your life? That means you're ready for us. Hi, I'm Moyann Harding, the region's only total turnkey realtor and interior designer. We'll come to you and help you decide what you're ready to let go of and bring you top dollar for those unwanted items. Most importantly, we'll sell your most valuable investment, your home. With decades of experience, just hand your keys to us and let the stress melt away. Call me today and book your consultation, www.moyann.com.
Moyann Harding, brokered by Keller Williams.
When you're voted one of the best plumbers according to Lynchburg Living magazine, you want to hire the best. Sullivan Plumbing wants the best plumbers to join our award-winning team. Do you have a clean driving record? Do you have at least 4 years plumbing experience? Then you're a 5-star recruit, and Sullivan Plumbing would love to meet with you. Take the first step. Call Sullivan Plumbing in downtown Lynchburg or email sullivanplumbing@gmail.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
I guess we've come up with a new term even during the last commercial break. It's a flexible Friday here in the Fast Lane as we welcome you back in on the VTRN Sports app and however you're listening to the Fast Lane, whether it's on podcast form or whatever. And just remember, if you're listening on podcast form, rainy Friday afternoon means Virginia Tech baseball postponed. So we teased it a half-hour Friday in the Fast Lane at Fast Lane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But we're going the full hour today because there will be a doubleheader of Virginia Tech baseball tomorrow, 11:30 airtime to start it, and highly unlikely we will get to the Virginia Tech spring football game because we're carrying both of those games in the big series against Florida State. And then on Sunday, it'll be the rubber match or whatever it is. Maybe one team wins both, but it'll be the final game of the Florida State Virginia Tech Top 25 Baseball Series, also 11:30 airtime on the VTRN Sports app this coming Sunday. So it's an overview that despite the fact that we carry Foster and Friends 9 to 10 a.m. every Saturday morning, and we do carry Virginia Tech football, men's, and a good chunk of women's basketball and a lot of baseball, the Virginia Tech baseball top 25 matchup supplanting the spring football game, which may be a disappointment to some because it's not going to be televised this year for whatever that's worth. And oh, by the way, if you wanted to, you could make the case you might want to get more out of the spring football game. But even then, I don't know how much they'll be eager to share without it being televised. Versus the fact that, well, there's the reality of spring football games in general, which is it's just a bit of the evidence you might gain on what the team can actually do over the course of the season. Now, somebody familiar with what's going to take place in the spring football game. You hear him every Saturday on Foster and Friends, 9 to 10 a.m. right here on VTR and Sports. Bud Foster, legendary defensive coordinator for Virginia Tech, back with us once again in the Fast Lane. Bud, hope you're well. Appreciate your time with us. And if I remember correctly, you just had hip replacement surgery, which begs the logical question, do you have an even greater appreciation for the rehab efforts of your former football players when they were going through such things?
Well, number one, yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Ed. It's always great to hear your voice and appreciate you promoting Foster and Friends. But, yeah, I'm coming off of coming up, it'll be 4 weeks. And, yeah, I do. I've had knee replacement and just a few years back. And so I do. When you see it, particularly guys that have a major injury from like a ACL or having shoulder surgery or anything of that nature, something major, you can really appreciate, what it goes into getting back. And, I'm 65, closing in on 66. So I think it's a little bit different when you're 21 and recovering, but by the same token, it's an uphill battle and there's a lot of work that goes into it. But yeah, I have gained an appreciation for, what the young people that participate in sports and, have major injuries go through.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. And obviously the perspective changes a little bit. It conveniently gives us an opportunity, different injuries, but a segue into the big one for Virginia Tech football is their former defensive coordinator and program advisor, Bud Foster, is with us here in the Fast Lane. And that's the Kyron Drones injury. It seems like there's some stuff left over from the end of last year. He practiced some in the spring, but an early shutdown for maybe maintenance, maybe making sure he's fully healthy for summer camp. What do you read into how Brent Pry, Kyron Drones, and the staff at Virginia Tech are handling that?
Well, I'll say this in a couple things. Yeah, I'm helping in an advisory role. I have been on the shelf because of my hip replacement, and but I have had access to film, and I've watched film, and I've been in touch with with Coach Pry and the defensive staff. I do know this Kyron went through everything this winter. And was having a great spring and had a great spring. And basically he has a lower leg injury. I don't know the exact detail myself. But it's a precautionary measure that they're going to take care of business, that he is going to be healthy and ready to go, when we kick things off. So it's nothing, I don't think that's, to be alarmed about. It's more of, just like you said, maintenance. Let's make sure we get him to fall camp and he's healthy and ready to go. But I do, he adjusted to the system with, Philip Montgomery being, coming in as a new coordinator. And I really liked how he was throwing the ball and progressing. And it's just more of he got settled into the offense. And now it's an opportunity though for, I think, some of the younger players at that position, because they brought in, 2 freshmen mid-semester, as well as you got Davi Belfour besides Pop Watson, all getting a chance to learn the system and be in a position where they can help if need be. But Kai was really doing well, and it's just, hey, he's in a good place, and I think they just want to make sure that he's going to be there this fall and not risk furthering anything any further.
Legendary former Virginia Tech Hokies defensive coordinator Bud Foster with us in the Fast Lane. Of course, you'll hear Foster and Friends every Saturday, 9 to 10 a.m. right here on the VTR and Sports app. Bud, you mentioned the new offense with Philip Montgomery. You combine that with a new offensive line coach for Virginia Tech. You mentioned having had a chance to watch it film. How are all these parts integrating as well as you could reasonably expect, given that it's still the new portion of practice before we get to summer when the heat really gets turned up in multiple ways?
Yeah, you only get so many opportunities. Now, I will say this, in this day and age of college athletics and college football, meaning the coaches, they can meet with the players more so than what we could, just even 6 years ago. But so they can, after they finish with spring practice, they'll be able to go through like OTAs, which is what the NFL does. It's like their spring practice, but without pads. So there's going to be opportunities to do that before they leave for summer break. But then, in 2 weeks, everybody will be back on campus. And for the month of June, they'll be able to basically do that same thing. So I think the progression, will happen so much quicker just because of the ability to meet with the players, be on the field with the players more. And, but I do like the new offensive line coach. He's brought in 3 new players. That's Matt Moore, our new line coach who came from West Virginia. They've always been big and physical up there, even in their, most recent years. He brought 3 linemen with him, and then he's got a great recruiting base. But I like the system that Monty has. We faced it. We played Coach Beamer's last ball game. We played Tulsa, and Monty was the head coach, and and called the offense at Tulsa at the time. It was very explosive and dynamic, and I see a lot of similarities there with the system. And then adding the new line coach, I just like what he's brought and the mentalities he's brought. And that's a group that we lost some players from last year there, but we have some bodies there that were redshirted and big bodies. And it's neat to see how they're trying to tie in their group, because that's a close-knit group, that offensive line, and there needs to be some chemistry, and they're really working hard to develop that chemistry right there, as well as learning the system and the new blocking schemes and that type of thing. But I like the direction that both sides of the ball are going. I like the effort that they're playing with, and that's a credit to the staff and the kids buying into the systems. And but I think it's going to, they're not going to show a whole lot on the spring game, but it's been fun for me to see the kids compete, learn, grow, and then and see them improve on a daily basis.
When you're looking at the spring game now as an outside observer, but still with your background as the former defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, Bud Foster's with us here in the Fast Lane, how much does your focus and should fans focus when they're over in Blacksburg for the spring game, part of a big loaded weekend of things going on at Virginia Tech with the Run to Remembrance and baseball and softball in action? How much should fans focus, maybe not on what the star players are doing, but what players that are fighting for increased roles are doing and how that shows off what they've already put on film for those that are watching behind closed doors like you and the coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, you have your players that, maybe were starters from a year ago, and they may feel more comfortable in that game-like setting. I always loved the spring game, and we were fortunate here that we had anywhere from 35 to 45,000 students in the stands for our fans in the stands, for our game. So, and that's a lot more than a lot of kids played in front of, if not all of them. And, practice is practice. And even though we practiced at a high level but it was neat to see kids when, so to speak, the lights came on, having a fan and having fans in the stands, and not that this was any more important than what we, the previous 14 days. But when you get a game-like atmosphere, it seems like you see some young people will rise to the occasion, and some may not do quite as well as you think they might. So, and that's a great learning experience for those folks, but I enjoyed the spring game. You see across the country, there's various programs that are not doing anything, not having a spring game. And I just like I just like that game-like atmosphere for these young people that was just a unique experience. And as a coach, you got a chance to see how they handled that situation.
It begs a bigger picture question with Bud Foster, host of Foster and Friends weekends. That's Saturday mornings, 9 to 10 a.m. right here on the VTR and Sports app. And that is just the overall state of the spring football games. They're not televising this. Brent Pry was open that, he doesn't want more film to get out on players that others could watch, and kind of gave his own confession that, they might do the same thing if they saw guys that they would pursue if the player entered the transfer portal and look at spring film as part of the overall body of work. Do you worry about the future of spring games, or is it just going to evolve into something more like Virginia Tech fans will be able to experience in person, but not really watch on TV this Saturday?
Yeah, I think that's the unique thing. I think more programs, they might be saying about a spring game is might be hiding your players because, it used to be a big thing to have your spring game televised because that was great promotion for your program and for your student athletes. But now with the day and age of there's poaching, there's no scruples right now in sports and particularly the college level. And but the good news is there's reform on the way. But I think that's a big part of why you're seeing programs not have spring games, not going to be televised, because of a couple things. For us, it's a couple things. I think it's, the portal. You don't want people to see, it might be somebody that an LSU or somebody that has a lot of NIL money laying around because July 1, those rules are going to fall into effect that you cannot just pay to play. You have to do a service and it has to be documented. It can't just be somebody giving a kid $1 million just to come to school, and maybe be a backup, it's, you just don't want those programs to maybe see somebody. If they have an injury that they may want to try to poach a player off your roster. And, but I do, like I said, there's reform in the future with the House versus the NCAA committee or, thing going on right now. And there's committees meeting with Congress and I think July 1 is it's a wild, wild west till July 1 and that settles down. So I think that's a big part of what teams are doing, particularly this spring, not allowing, other programs to see your roster.
Bud Foster with us in the Fast Lane, giving us an overview on the Virginia Tech spring football game, which is Saturday afternoon in Blacksburg, and an overview on the overall outlook for spring football games. Bud, we appreciate your time joining us in the Fast Lane to, of course, preview Foster and Friends Saturdays 9 to 10 a.m. right here on the VTRN Sports app. And, of course, look ahead to the spring football game and discuss some storylines around it as part of what is a big weekend for Virginia Tech with the doubleheader Saturday for baseball, softball, big series at home, and of course, so many other fun sports activities taking place in Blacksburg.
Well, I look forward to it, Ed. Yeah, and we do. We have a big weekend in Blacksburg. Obviously, we're with the baseball game. It's a big series. The Hokies are playing really, really well. We're a top 25 team, and Florida State's been one of the premier teams in college baseball for a number of years. You've got our softball team that's hovering around the top 10, and we've got a big series this weekend besides the football game. So I know you guys are going to stay busy, and I appreciate you allowing me time to be on the air with you, and I look forward to doing it again, my friend.
Indeed. Bud Foster, legendary Virginia Tech Hokies defensive coordinator, still a football program advisor. And of course, you hear him Saturdays 9 to 10 a.m. on the VTRN Sports app as part of Foster and Friends and as part of a big Saturday of Virginia Tech athletics, since we'll also be carrying the doubleheader against Florida State with the great Evan Hughes at 11:30 a.m. If you missed anything today, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts. I swear we try to be on top of things at Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even when weather throws us, pun intended since we're talking about baseball here, but curveballs with our schedule on random notices like a Friday afternoon during the month of April when the old April shower saying pops back up like it has, which is why we have a full schedule today, even though for a while we teased it at Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that we would be on for a half hour. We're on for a full hour, basically, including some great partners of ours being mentioned, because the baseball game postponed till Saturday. So thank you for bearing with us. We appreciate it. Always love to get your feedback. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll do our best to get to more of that next week in the Fast Lane. Plus, react to the Masters. Trey will have plenty of that Monday in the morning warm-up and Monday in the Fast Lane. We'll have your teams and topics covered in Covering the Commonwealth. As always, Tech, UVA, Liberty, JMU, maybe the Washington Commanders, and certainly the Lynchburg Hillcats in NASCAR as well. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.
This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.